Boston College launched an oral history project dedicated to Ireland's so-called Troubles. The message was clear. That country's long nightmare of brutal sectarian violence belonged in the archives. But it turns out Ireland wasn't ready to put that part of its past behind it. And BC is now learning that the hard way. WGBH News reporter Adam Riley has more.
Let me be very clear. I am innocent of any involvement in any conspiracy to abduct, kill or bury Mrs. McConville.
That's Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams, outraged after being interrogated about the 1972 murder of Jean McConville, a widowed mother of 10 who was accused of informing on Irish Republicans. Adams' arrest is the latest headache for Boston College and its Belfast project. From 2001 to 2006, BC researchers interviewed former militants under a guarantee of confidentiality. But in 2011, the U.S. government subpoenaed those interviews at the UK's request.
We're still considering our legal options, but we realize the sensitivity of the case.
BC says it fought hard to keep the interviews private, but former BC researcher Anthony McIntyre sharply disagrees.
I don't think that over the run of events that Boston College put up the fight, particularly in the political arena, that it could have and should have done.
Adams claims he's been smeared by IRA holdouts who oppose peace and insists they're fighting a losing cause.
The IRA is gone. It's finished.
But apparently the toxic legacy of the Troubles is not. Adam Riley, WGBH News.
BC has faced tough questions over the past week, many of them directed at my next guest. Jack Dunn is Director of Public Affairs at Boston College. Jack, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just start with the initial accusations that have been leveled at BC, and that is that the college didn't fight hard enough when these subpoenas came down. There was 2 of them, and that basically you caved in to pressure from the government and released the data.
I think that's patently false. Boston College fought a legal battle for more than 2 years and won a significant victory in reducing the number of transcripts that were ultimately sent over to British law enforcement from 85 to portions of 11 involving 7 interviewees. So we won a significant victory, but we were in no position as an academic institution to defy a federal court subpoena. 2
of the principals involved in this, one of the archivist and a reporter that was involved in it, both tell the same story. And they say that they were guaranteed that they would not be subjected to this kind of litigation, and that Boston College was supposed to, dot some I's and cross some T's, with various departments to ensure that that just could not happen.
The Burns librarian at Boston College, who was our contact person for this case, insists that that was not the case. And Ed Maloney, as we all know, signed a contract that stated
He's the reporter, yeah.
Yes, Ed Maloney is the reporter who ran the project. He was the project director. He signed a contract that stated that confidentiality would be limited to the extent that American law would allow. He was also faxed a fax from Bob O'Neill, BC's librarian, in May of 2000 that said, I cannot guarantee, for example, that we'd be able to withstand a federal court subpoena if one were issued. So he was aware of the limitations that were involved. One
of the frustrating things about this is that no one really knows what's on those tapes, except for Judge William Young and a few other people, presumably the PINS in Northern Ireland, and listened to the tapes. Have you ever heard them?
No, I've read transcripts from some of the tapes.
Was Gerry Adams implicated on tape in the murder of Jean McConville?
I'm not at liberty to discuss the specifics of the transcripts. That is why the PSNI sought the tapes. Yeah, PSNI actually. And the reality is there's an MLAT treaty that preceded the Belfast project. It's been an agreement between the United States and the UK since 1994. So there was always a possibility that it would come to this. But after the Good Friday Peace Accords in 1998, there was such goodwill that emanated from Northern Ireland. No one thought that British law enforcement would take that step.
Right.
Well, they did.
And it's taken a step back because the whole idea of an archive is to have an oral history, not to prosecute people for saying, even if it's not all true, we don't even know what's true.
That's right. It was an opportunity to provide scholars and historians, reporters with information from the Troubles to assist in the process of peace and reconciliation in Northern Ireland. So by everyone's account, the intentions were good.
Carrie Toomey, who is married to Anthony McIntyre and has been a vocal critic of the subpoenas and the subsequent release of the tapes, spoke to us by telephone the other day and basically said that she and her husband are now in a situation, because of the release of the tapes and because of what may be on them, they fear for their lives. And here's a little bit of what she told us.
when graffiti, such as in former Republicans' Boston College touts, goes on the walls of the Falls Road, which has happened this morning, yes, we are at risk. And it's not just us, my family, my husband, and my children that are at risk. It is all the people that participated very bravely in this project.
BC's fault, but now, because the tapes have been released, people like Carrie Toomey feel threatened.
Well, obviously, she's entitled to her opinions, and we hope no one is the victim of any violence. The entire purpose of this archive was to try to promote peace and reconciliation in Northern Ireland. So the reality is, as I said before, this MLAT treaty was in existence long before the Belfast project began in 2000. And the reality is they deserve criticism because, as we all know, it was Ed Maloney and Anthony McIntyre. Ed Maloney published a book in 2000 that led to this first subpoena. And then an interview with the Boston Globe, when the subpoena was issued in May of 2001, suggested that BC destroy the archive. That is what led to the second subpoena. So they deserve criticism.
By the way, clarify, if you would, because Ed Maloney did kind of violate the embargo himself, as far as I understand it, by writing that book.
Right.
But what was the original agreement? That all of the key parties had to be dead? This woman, Dolores Price, is the one who allegedly implicated Gerry Adams in the murder of Jean McConville. But what was the deal? Did everybody in the immediate
the deal was
collection have to be dead? How?
Individual tapes were supposed to be kept confidentially until the death of the participants. In retrospect, what they all should have agreed upon was that there'd be a 30-year embargo. The irony, Emily, is that the British government deposited in Boston College's Burns Library the International Independent Commission on Decommissioning archive about the people of the IRA and the UVF who laid down their arms, and they imposed that 30-year confidentiality sanction. So the very government that imposed that sanction on a project in our library violated the existing sanction and went in and used the courts to get subpoenas after prior to the death of the participants involved.
And since that has happened, why doesn't BC take the aggressive step now of just releasing the whole thing? Put an end to the debate over who's implicated, who said what. Everybody else has violated the embargo. Why not just release it?
Well, we're under court order not to release anything. That was the reality during the entire legal process. We were not in a position to release any of the tapes. Now that the court process has ended, those who've written to us to say, I'd like my tape back, we're willing to comply and return them to them. Without making a dub for yourselves? Without making a transcript? Yeah, I just as soon have the information be returned to those people who gave the interviews with the belief that they'd be maintained in confidence until their death. All right. Well, it's a tragedy because I think people were probably looking forward to being able to go through that. Who's the loser in the end? Historians, researchers, journalists who miss out on an opportunity to understand what was in those archives, clearly. All right, Jack Dunn, thanks for coming.